I stood in the courthouse bathroom, adjusting my blazer for the 10th time. The scarred skin on my back pulled tight with every movement, a constant reminder of that night 3 years ago. My lawyer, Ms. Bennett, had warned me they'd both be there today. My mother and Marcus, my stepfather. The perfect couple, pillars of our small community, youth group leaders at First Baptist Church. If only their congregation could have heard my little sister's screams that night. The memory crashed over me like a wave. Sarah, only 11, cowering in the corner as Marcus towered over her, belt in hand, because she'd forgotten to call him sir. I'd stepped between them, something I'd never dared to do before. "Don't touch her," I'd said, my voice shaking but determined. "She's just a kid." The next few moments played in slow motion in my nightmares. Marcus's face contorting with rage. My mother appearing in the doorway, her eyes cold and distant. "Julia needs another lesson in respect, doesn't she, dear?" she'd said, as if discussing the weather. I touched the back of my neck, feeling the raised scar tissue through my shirt. The metal rod from our fireplace set had still been decorated with our family name, Bennett. The irony wasn't lost on me that it now matched my lawyer's name. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Julia?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "The bailiff says it's time." I opened the bathroom door. Sarah, now 14, stood there in her best dress, the one we'd bought together after I got her out. Dark circles under her eyes told me she hadn't slept either. "You don't have to do this," I said, straightening her collar. "You can wait outside." She squared her shoulders, looking so much older than 14. "I'm not leaving you alone with them again. Never again." Walking into the courtroom, I felt their eyes immediately. My mother dressed in her Sunday best, clutching her Bible like a shield. Marcus, his face a mask of righteous indignation. Their supporters filled 2 whole rows, church members who'd written letters defending their firm but loving parenting style. My side had fewer people but stronger ones. Ms. Bennett, who'd taken my case pro bono after seeing my scars. Detective Rivera, who photographed the burns and listened to Sarah's testimony with tears in his eyes. Dr. Chen, who documented years of suspicious injuries that our family doctor had ignored. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge Martinez entered, her face unreadable. She'd spent the last 3 days reviewing evidence, photographs, medical records, Sarah's diary, and the video that changed everything. My mother had always recorded their disciplinary sessions, proof, she said, that they were doing God's work. The night of the branding, she propped her phone on the mantelpiece, capturing everything in horrible clarity. "Before we proceed," Judge Martinez began, "I want to address something submitted into evidence this morning." She lifted a familiar leather-bound book. "Mrs. Harrison, you recognize this diary?" My mother's face paled. It was her private journal, the one she kept locked in her bedside drawer. The one where she detailed every punishment with disturbing pride. "Objection, Your Honor." Their lawyer stood. "That diary was obtained illegally." Overruled, Judge Martinez cut him off. "The diary was found during a legal search of the Harrison residence, authorized after Ms. Harrison's younger sister reported additional abuse." The courtroom fell silent as Judge Martinez read an entry. "Julia's defiance required stronger measures today." The Lord guided Marcus's hand as we pressed the brand to her flesh. Her screams were prayers of redemption. Someone in the church group gasped. I felt Sarah's hand slip into mine, squeezing tight. "Mrs. Harrison," the judge continued, "you wrote this the night you held down your 15-year-old daughter while your husband pressed a heated metal rod into her back. You wrote that her skin sizzled like Satan leaving her body." My mother's face hardened. "We were saving her soul. By burning your family name into her flesh?" She needed to remember who she belonged to. Marcus interrupted, his voice self-righteous. "Everything we did was out of love." Judge Martinez's gaze could have frozen hell. "Mr. Harrison, I suggest you remain silent." "I'm not finished." She turned another page in the diary. "There are 3 years of entries here. 3 years of documented torture disguised as discipline. 3 years of evidence that you and your wife methodically abused 2 children while your community turned a blind eye." The church group shifted uncomfortably. Some were seeing us, really seeing us, for the first time. "Your Honor," Ms. Bennett stood. "The prosecution would like to play the video from the night in question." I closed my eyes. I didn't need to watch. I still lived it every night in my dreams, but I needed everyone else to see. Needed them to hear my screams, see my mother's smile, witness Marcus's righteousness as he pressed that metal into my skin. The projector hummed to life, and my 15-year-old voice filled the courtroom. Please, Mom, please don't let him. The video played with merciless clarity on the courtroom's projection screen. Every gasp, every plea, every sickening sizzle of flesh echoed through the silent room. The camera angle showed everything. My mother's serene smile as she pinned my arms, Marcus's face twisted in righteous satisfaction, and Sarah's small form huddled in the corner, hands pressed over her ears. Turn it up, Judge Martinez ordered when Marcus's voice came through the speakers. This is what happens when you challenge my authority in my Christian household. Several church members got up and left, unable to watch. Mrs. Peterson, who'd written a glowing character reference for my parents, vomited into her purse. The worst part wasn't the physical violence, it was the prayers they recited while doing it. My mother's voice, calm and measured. Lord, we thank you for giving us the strength to correct our wayward daughter. When the video showed Marcus reheating the rod for a second burn, Judge Martinez raised her hand. That's enough. Her voice shook slightly. Bailiff, lights. The fluorescent lights flickered back on, revealing tears on several jurors' faces. One elderly man was openly sobbing. Detective Rivera took the stand next. We found similar implements in the Harrison residence during our search, he testified, placing evidence bags on the table. All with signs of use. All with different family-related phrases meant to be branded into skin. He held up each bag. Property of father. God's faithful daughter. Obedient wife. These were meant for future use, he continued. Based on diary entries, they had plans for young Sarah's 13th birthday. Sarah stiffened beside me. That birthday would have been next month. My mother stood suddenly. We are their parents. We have the right. Sit down, Mrs. Harrison, Judge Martinez thundered. You have the right to remain silent, which I strongly suggest you exercise before you incriminate yourself further. Marcus's lawyer, sweating now, attempted damage control. Your Honor, while my client's methods may seem extreme to some, they were acting within their sincerely held religious beliefs. Objection. Ms. Bennett's voice cracked like a whip. Religious freedom does not extend to torture of minors. Sustained, Judge Martinez ruled. And counsel, I suggest you rethink your defense strategy. This court will not entertain religious justification for child abuse. The next hour brought a parade of medical experts. They showed x-rays of old fractures, photographs of belt marks, documentation of accidents that had been explained away. Dr. Chin's testimony was particularly damning. The scarring on Julia's back will be permanent, he explained. The tissue damage is extensive, and the psychological trauma. He paused, composing himself. In 15 years of emergency medicine, I've never seen calculated cruelty of this magnitude. During a brief recess, Sarah tugged my sleeve. Look, she whispered. Our former pastor was talking to my mother, his face ashen. She reached for his arm, but he recoiled, shaking his head. One by one, the church members who had come to support them moved to different seats, leaving my parents isolated. When court resumed, Ms. Bennett called me to the stand. I walked past my parents, feeling Marcus's glare burning into my back, fitting, given the circumstances. Julia, Ms. Bennett said gently, can you tell the court what happened after the night of the branding? I took a deep breath. I couldn't go to school for weeks. The wounds got infected. My mother said it was God's way of drawing out my demons. My voice strengthened, but she made a mistake. She sent me to school too soon, before the bandages could be removed. My gym teacher saw them during class. And what happened then? She called CPS. But my parents were respected in the community. They convinced everyone I was troubled, making up stories. I looked directly at my mother. Until Sarah got sick. The courtroom tensed. This was the turning point, the detail that had finally cracked their perfect facade. They wouldn't take her to the hospital, I continued. Said prayer would heal her appendicitis. I waited until they were at church, took their spare car keys, and drove her to the emergency room. She was minutes from rupturing. You were 16, Ms. Bennett clarified. No license, no permission. You risked everything to save your sister. They would have let her die, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. Just like they would have killed me eventually, all in the name of discipline. I looked at the jury, at the church members who had enabled my parents for years. The brand on my back says honor thy father, but real honor, real faith, isn't about power or pain. It's about love. And there was never any love in that house. Just control disguised as righteousness. Marcus stood up, his chair clattering backward. You ungrateful. Mr. Harrison. Judge Martinez's gavel crashed down. One more outburst and you'll be removed from this courtroom. Though given the evidence we've seen, that may be the least of your concerns. The judge's eyes met mine, and I saw something there, not pity, but understanding. She'd seen through their godly masquerade to the monsters beneath. Court will recess for 1 hour, she announced. When we return, I'll announce my verdict. As the bailiff led my parents out, my mother turned to look at me one last time. The mask of maternal concern had finally cracked, revealing the coldness that had always lived behind her eyes. I didn't look away. I wasn't their victim anymore. The scars on my back weren't marks of shame. They were evidence of survival. When court resumed, the tension was palpable. My parents sat ramrod straight, still clinging to their righteousness, but the emptiness of the benches behind them told a different story. Their supporters had fled, leaving only their lawyer, who looked like he wanted to do the same. Judge Martinez didn't waste time with preliminaries. In my 20 years on the bench, she began, I have seen many cases of child abuse. I have seen parents who hurt their children out of anger, addiction, or mental illness. But what I've witnessed in this courtroom is something altogether different. Systematic, calculated torture justified through a perversion of faith. She lifted my mother's diary. This document details 3 years of premeditated abuse. Mrs. Harrison, you wrote about selecting implements, planning sessions, choosing which parts of your children's bodies would best hide the marks. You documented your daughter's pain with what I can only describe as satisfaction. My mother's face remained stone-like, but her hands trembled. Mr. Harrison, the judge continued, you branded a 15-year-old girl like cattle. You marked her body permanently to assert your ownership. This court rejects any notion that such actions fall under parental rights or religious freedom. The judge paused, removing her glasses. Julia Harrison, please stand. I rose on shaking legs, Sarah's hand still clutched in mine. This court finds overwhelming evidence of aggravated child abuse, torture, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit bodily harm. Marcus and Elizabeth Harrison, please rise. They stood, my mother still clutching her Bible. This court sentences you each to 25 years in state prison, without possibility of parole for 15 years. Additionally, you are permanently forbidden from any contact with Julia or Sarah Harrison, directly or through third parties. The gavel crashed down and something broke inside me, not in pain, but in release. 3 years of fear, of looking over my shoulder, of nightmares about them finding us, ended with that sound. Marcus lunged forward. You can't do this. They're our children. Not anymore, Judge Martinez stated as bailiffs moved to restrain him. They stopped being your children the moment you chose cruelty over love. Remove them. As they were led away, my mother finally cracked. Julia, tell them we did it for you. Tell them we loved you. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the last time. Love doesn't leave scars, Mom. The bailiffs led them out, my mother's sobs echoing through the courtroom. The same sobs she used to fake when convincing neighbors we were a happy family. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras. Ms. Bennett helped us navigate through them, but I paused at the top of the steps. Sarah squeezed my hand, understanding what I needed to do. Yes, I'll make a statement, I told the reporters. But not about the verdict. I want to talk to other kids living in homes like mine, kids whose parents use faith to justify abuse. The cameras rolled as I spoke. You're not alone. What they're doing isn't love, isn't discipline, and isn't God's will. There are people who will help you. There are people who will believe you. You don't have to carry those scars alone. That evening, Sarah and I sat in our small apartment, the one I'd rented with my salary as a youth counselor after getting custody of her. The phone kept ringing with calls from support groups and survivors who'd seen the news. What do we do now? Sarah asked, curled up on our second-hand couch. I touched the back of my neck, feeling the scars that no longer held power over me. We heal. We help others heal. And we live, really live, without fear. A week later, I received a package from the courthouse. Inside was my mother's diary, now marked as evidence, and a note from Judge Martinez. Your testimony will help change laws. Your courage will help change lives. I put the diary on a shelf, not hidden away, but kept as a reminder. Not of the pain, but of survival, of transformation, of justice. The brand on my back had been meant to mark me as their property forever. Instead, it became a symbol of everything I'd overcome. Each scar told a story, not of their cruelty, but of my strength. Sarah started high school that fall, no longer the scared little girl hiding in corners. I went back to college, studying social work. The nightmares didn't stop completely, but they changed. In them, I was no longer the victim. I was the protector, standing between monsters and other children who needed saving. Sometimes, late at night, I still trace the raised letters on my back. But they don't spell "Honor Thy Father" anymore. To me, they spell "Survivor." And that's the title I chose to keep.